There I go. Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. I'm your host, Orlando Haynes. Each and every week, phenomenal guests, phenomenal advice. I just need you folks to take action on the advice that's being provided. So I don't want to belabor this because it's going to be a ton of information from a highly skilled individual. But let me just say this particular episode is sponsored by the Career Accelerator Planner. It's a planner designed for you, the corporate professional. So anytime you need to track your performance, your wins, and log those wins in corporate America, this is the planner to do so. It has prompted questions for pre and post projects in there. So this way, when it comes time for those crucial conversations around career, whether it's merit increase, salary promotions, or career transitions, or when it's time for you to upgrade your resume for a career change, you have the information to give to these executive resume writer like my guest today. So go head on over to the careeracceleratorplanner.com, careeracceleratorplanner.com. We'll also have a digital copy dropping soon as well. So today, you've seen the flyer. You had to. Like, if you, come on, you've seen who I have. Right? Kamar Tafalo is an executive resume writer, LinkedIn strategist, job search, or should I say LinkedIn top voice, job search strategist. And she is all over LinkedIn, dropping tremendous value. You have got to follow this young lady. Let me bring her in, Ms. Kamara Tafalo. How are you?
Hi, Orlando. I'm great. Thank you. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Good.
I forgot. Are you in the East Coast, up north, or what part of
I,
town?
I am up north, very far up north in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
Canada.
And
That's
we're
right.
getting a huge dump of snow right now.
Funny.
So
I would say my last several guests, let me see, have all been out of Canada. All been out.
is that so?
Yes,
Really?
yes, yeah. A ton of
Canadians taking over.
there are. You are absolutely dominating in the career development space. I can't go on LinkedIn without. I'm like, who's this person? Canada, Ontario, Ottawa. I'm like, oh my god. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
move over there. So share with the folks more about you and your expertise and background.
Sure. So, as you already mentioned, thank you for the intro. I'm an executive resume writer and job search strategist, and I was named the LinkedIn Top Voice in 2020, which was a huge honor. And really, my goal, my mission is to make job searching less hard for job seekers, because I don't think it should be as hard as it is. And so I do that through working with my clients one-on-one, resume writing, uh, at LinkedIn profile writing, but also through my YouTube channel, where I try and offer some valuable tips and tricks for people who are DIYing it. And I have a very unconventional career path myself, which is kind of it ties in nicely with what we're going to be talking about today. I have a background in financial services and fintech,
Mm,
and I apprenticed under a successful a couple of resume writers and who were previously recruiters, and they taught me all the tricks of the trade, and how to craft really compelling resumes. And I've carried what they taught me all throughout to this day. So been doing it now for 7 years,
hmm
almost 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
So you said something key there, which I feel a lot of folks who watch the podcast should just soak it in. You said job search should not be that hard. And they're
mhm.
probably thinking, what? You're right. But how do we make it not so hard? So I'm sure that's probably some of the questions are like, h- what's the golden egg? What's the ticket? What's that little insight secret? Where do you begin to transform that process for your clients to take it from hard to a little more easier?
So that process actually starts of making it easier for job seekers. It actually starts before they come to me,
Mm,
or I might send them to do a little more work before we do our work together. And where job seekers are really making a job search harder on themselves is they are trying to job search when it's too early in
mm,
the whole process.
okay.
So, like, oh, I'd really like a career change. I want to get out of this toxic workplace. I really want to do something new. Those are common feelings that come up. And so kind of the knee-jerk reactions just immediately launch into a job search. But what we want to do first is get clear on what we're going after. So we're not constantly reinventing strategy, not constantly reinventing our resume. And that is what takes the job search. That's what makes a huge difference in terms of taking the job search from super hard to less hard.
So for the folks that are looking to make a career transition, right, is that also functional and or industry or both that you come across?
Uh, for my purposes, function is the priority in terms of clarifying and getting really clear on what you want to be doing functionally. So having that target job very clearly identified, and really being able to name the title of that target job.
Mm,
So we know we're not clear when we're like, oh, I could do this, but I could also do this, but I could also do this. That we're not clear. So we have a little bit more homework and reflection to do in order to achieve the clarity. But function for me is priority number one. And then for those very specialized industries, that's when we might need to have a little more clarity on where we're headed, into what industry, what sector, in order to make sure we're drawing out the really important transferable skills and translatable accomplishments.
yeah. So what are some of the questions you're asking folks to give them or for have them so they can gain that clarity? Say someone's in marketing and now wants to go into IT or vice versa. What are some of those key questions aside from why?
Right. So typically, if they haven't already identified what the target job is, I'm going to send them to a career coach. But if they have identified clearly what it is, so you said marketing to IT.
Hmm.
So you nailed it exactly. It's the why. So I'm going to be asking them why they want to make the shift. What is it about going from marketing to IT is going to give them, or what they feel give them the different career that they're searching for, yearning for, because there's something that's very, very intrinsic that's driving them. And so I want to get to the bottom of that. But I also want to reframe it so that it makes sense to future
Hmm.
employers. So oftentimes when someone is talking about a career change, they'll say, I want more work-life balance. I mean, yeah, that's good that that's your first priority for yourself and your family and your life. But your future employer doesn't really care about your work-life balance, right? So
Oh my
what
God,
can
yes.
you bring to the future employer that will make a difference for them? And what unique perspective from your, previous life, previous career can you bring and infuse into your future career, your changed career? And that's where I spend the most of my time with my clients when we're writing their career change resumes, is really nailing down what translates and what is super unique and refreshing that they can bring to the table that someone else, who has had a linear career path, would not be able to.
Mm. So can you share one of your more recent clients and what that process or what the outcome was in terms of they were coming from X, wanted to go here, and then in such a few months or whatever they landed that opportunity? Because I think guests will still want to hear like, okay, is it still possible, right? Is it still possible to change not only change functions, but possibly industries, but functions is the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll tell you about the the most drastic, the wildest career change that
Okay.
I wrote about, which was actually very early in my resume writing career, and that was someone going from being a marine biologist, like Free Willy type of marine biologist,
Wow.
to, to real estate analyst. So it was like, what? So we're going
Okay.
from oceans to buildings. Anyway,
Yeah.
so and believe it or not, so one thing that I believe wholeheartedly in is that every career um, has a common thread. You just have to
Hmm.
find that thread, and so we were able to do that for her. So um, this client in particular had great success and actually got interviews right out of the gate after we worked together. She was working on upskilling and like getting credentials in her new field. I don't want to glaze over that. That is going to be important in a career transition, to upskill or take some sort of training or even on the job training to help you build those new skills for your new direction. But we were really able to translate her strengths in analysis, because there is a great deal of analysis in her science work,
Mm-hmm.
in her biology work, and translate it into the world of real estate. What we also did is we really leveraged her personal story, and that was her ultimate drive for making that career shift. Is she had a strong personal tie to
Mm.
the real estate, the world of real estate. Um, and so we actually use that in her cover letter. Um, and just really, it's really about kind of leaving a trail of breadcrumbs and connecting in her resume just how work in or accomplishments in her marine biology work really lend themselves well to future work in real estate. So there is a lot of work and a lot of reflection and a lot of massaging of skills and strengths and accomplishments in order to make your career change resume work. But I am confident there's always a possible way to make it happen.
Like my brain couldn't even connect the two you're talking about.
I know
Marine biology.
it's
Like
yeah, once you
what?
get in there, and yeah, I know. It seems so wild. And then a recent client was going from their job search was on pause at the moment, but they were
Mhm.
going from fashion designer to recruiter.
Wow.
So
Mm.
and the connection made there was they were creating they know how to create custom strategies, custom fashion, to
Mhm.
give the client what they envision for themselves. So they know how to work with clients to create customized strategies in order to build the workforce that they're envisioning for their business.
Wow. That's that's interesting because I think each guest there, I would say a few guests will say something that makes me think, hey, you can take that a little deeper. Like I don't know if you thought about doing um, kind of a short mini course on some of the more difficult transitions. Like if you're leaping from A to Z, you want to be an astronaut, now you want to be a project manager or whatever the case may be. Because you obviously done a few, so you're pulling out something, right? You're finding something. Is that
There's always
just through
something.
conversation, deeper conversation with the client, or is it just hey, here's your
Absolutely.
resume? Okay.
No, no, it is. So with each, and thank you for the suggestion of the course. It's definitely in my back pocket. It's something I've been thinking about some way. But anyway, thank you for that. In terms of extracting this information that can really be leveraged
Mhm.
in a career change resume, it is deep conversations with my clients. So I spend 2 hours kind of like fact finding with each client
Mhm.
who I write resumes for. And prior to that, I have their old resume on hand. I have links to their target job that they want to change to, let's say. And I have them fill out an extensive questionnaire. So there's a ton of information
Mhm.
that is in the bank, and then I review, and then I pick out what makes sense, put together what makes sense. So it's really getting to know the client really in depth, for sure.
Awesome. I want to jump to a question that Nadia Morgan proposed. How do you frame a resume after a 6 year gap? That's
For
that's
sure.
yeah.
Sorry.
So no, go ahead, go ahead. Actually, I had a
Oh,
question about
okay.
that yesterday for someone who I did a presentation for a friend, Angie Kellen, and she had one person was worried about that because they had an 8 year gap,
Mm.
um, and so I'd love to hear your response to see how do you craft that after a 6 year gap.
Yeah. So I think it can depend on what the gap is created by, because
Hmm.
sometimes I think some job seekers are thinking there's a gap when there's not actually a gap. So I had a surprising conversation on my in my YouTube comments with someone who thought there was a gap, but really they were a contractor for 9 years, but they thought it was a gap. So
Oh,
um, I'd love for Nadia to, if she wants to share the reason for the gap, that can help me get even more specific. But basically, for a 6 year gap, or any gap for that matter, we just want to address that there is the gap. Oh my goodness, Nadia, I'm so sorry.
wow.
Um, oh dear, I'm so sorry. I hope you're doing well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's the challenge of, so we want to address the career gap, but head on. But we also want to make sure that we're honoring our own personal information and keeping that discreet. So in the case of Nadia, it sounds like she was working on her health and recovery during this time period, as well as she was taken back. She was went back a few steps because the pandemic hit, and that got in the way as well.
Hmm.
So I would say in Nadia's case, so we all know that the pandemic has happened. So I wouldn't be so stressed about addressing that. But I would say that you took a temporary leave during this time period. I wouldn't say the reason for it, because we want to honor your own personal information, but say that you took a temporary leave and you are now ready to step into your next role as blank, and then put the time frame on it. So when your recovery started to present, perhaps. And if you've done anything in the meantime, like upskilling, even taking like a free course on like LinkedIn
Hmm.
Learning, indicate that as well. So we're going to have like a couple bullets. So took temporary leave, ready for next role as blah. Bullet one. Bullet number two will say completed courses in topic, and just leave it at that. We don't want to divulge anything super personal, because we might open ourselves up to unwarranted bias. That would be my number one concern.
Right.
Someone hears the Nadia's story, they might think, oh, she physically able to take on this role, and the wheels start spinning, right? So I see Nadia's coming in with more comments here.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, no, I was just going to share. Here two quick tips for you, Nadia, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us. Is one, I would urge you to connect with Kamara post this broadcast for from a resume standpoint, and then really look at connecting with a career coach that can have you craft the verbal, unless Kamara does that as well, how you communicate that in an interview. Right, the resume says one thing. There's still going to be questions from a recruiter like myself. You need to make sure you have the proper verbiage so you can confidently communicate that in an interview, and then you just move on and crush it and land the opportunity. Then you're also figuring out how can that work with, because you also mentioned you go to physical therapy 4 times a week, so there's definitely an opportunity out there. Plus data science, you can do that anywhere. But yeah, I would
Yeah.
say partner with Kamara for crafting that resume to start opening the doors for interviews and things like that, and then take it from there with getting the proper language during the interview process.
Thank
So
you.
I've gotten mixed advice on this. Yep. So I would,
Yeah.
yeah, those are probably two best tips I can tell you for sure. That'll help you
Thanks.
get through all of that. And first and foremost, take care of yourself. Don't jump out there
Yes,
too soon
please
if you're
do.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're not ready. Awesome. But yeah, feel free to continue to ask questions. Again, Nadia, appreciate it. And whoever the LinkedIn user is, you might be on privacy mode, so I don't know who you are. If you want to share your name, appreciate you participating as well. Um, Again, so that whole piece there you shared earlier about personal story, and you put it on the cover letter, which can answer the question of that's been thrown around. Is cover letters still, viable nowadays? As a
This
recruiter,
is
I can tell you
always the
I have a difference of
okay.
opinion.
Yes. Yes. So I always love the cover letter conversation because everybody has such and everybody has different opinions and everybody has
Mhm.
such a strong opinion on them, you know. um so uh, I this is the and I was tweeting about this last week actually because cover letters always come out. Cover letters, a lot of people say it's not worth, and I'd love to hear your opinion, Orlando,
Mhm.
on cover letters, but a lot of folks say don't bother with a cover letter. A lot of recruiters say don't bother with a cover letter. They're useless. You know, like I don't read them, whatever. But there's too many instances of folks reading them and hiring managers expecting them. So I see a cover letter at a minimum as insurance. So it's there in the times that you need it. And if it's there when you don't need it, oh, okay, it can just be thrown out. Like it isn't
Yep.
like they can disregard the recruiters and hiring managers can just disregard it. But if they want it, you've got it for them. Or if they want it, you've got it for them.
Yeah, short answer is ditto, 100%. So, from a
Okay.
recruiter perspective, we don't necessarily. There's some obviously that can say, "Yeah, I read through all that," but if depending on the types of roles you're recruiting on, most of us don't look at them. If it's an executive role, we'll probably take more onus on it
Mm,
and read through that. But hiring managers, that was key right there in what you said, Kamara, is that hiring managers, especially at an executive level, senior level, they will read every milk and cranny of your documents. So they'll want to see grammar, all this
there
and
you
like,
go.
oh, I've heard with like, punctuation was off. Are you kidding me? like,
Yeah.
let's like, no, no, no. Let's figure out if the person's a good fit before we discount them based
Oh
on
my
a
gosh.
some grammatical errors. I'm like, oh my god. But yeah, it won't hurt. Plain and simple, it won't hurt. Yeah, so I love that. Good.
Great.
So when it comes to is there another way to share that personal story? Because in that particular instance of what you shared, what if right? What if that recruiter or hiring manager bypassed that cover letter and didn't see the connection and like, wow, she's really passionate about this industry, and then seeing the connection in the I guess the analytics or the data of it between the two positions. Like, is there another space or area where we can share that personal story?
Sure. So one thing I want to just back up to with the personal
Hmm.
story because we're just talking about Nadia's personal story as well. I just want to to just clarify with the personal story sharing. I think it's safe to share a personal story only when it's not going to expose us to unnecessary bias.
Mm.
So in the case of my um, marine biologist turned real estate analyst client. Her story was safe, very relatable to anyone universally, and so that's why we did include it. You could consider including it in a very short way, like if it's possible to sum it up into one sentence within your resume, within the opening professional profile paragraph. In that opening paragraph, it would be good to say and to call out what you're coming from and what you're going to, just so
Mm.
that's also clear. And then you can get into why you're different, why you offer a unique perspective. So yeah, I think you could shortly sum it up in that opening paragraph. If you feel it's a personal story that you think is a different differentiator for you.
What do you have? Two questions. One is probably you probably get the question 1,000 times and probably sick of it. From, is it a 2 pager? Is it a 3 pager? Is it a 1 pager? But that can be the second question. But the first question is, what are you seeing from your clients? Um, the epiphany piece when you craft it all together, and they're like, "Oh my god, I didn't know I had all this," or thank you for bringing this all out, Kamara. I didn't know I did this and or recalled. Like, what are some of those epiphanies? They're like, oh my god, like this is incredible. If that makes
The
sense
epiphany, the
from the client.
epiphany that that I hear from them.
Yeah.
Um, so things I hear from them are, I'd hire this person. But maybe that's not an epiphany. That's just, this looks good. Um, really, like, I, a lot of, I knew I did this, but I didn't really realize it until I saw it on paper. That kind of
Mm,
thing. Like,
hmm hmm
it's really just holding up a mirror to them and being like, "You did this." And I have to get a copy of your, I have to, like, when I get off this call with this podcast with you, I'm gonna go and get your book because your accelerator, career accelerator
Planet. I'll send you a copy. Send
planet.
me your address.
Oh,
Yeah.
you will? Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely.
Okay. Because every job seeker needs that. Like, literally every person needs that, who's going to be an employee, because even entrepreneurs need that, because that's like what makes for a great resume,
Hmm
is what you're writing down in your in your workbook, or on a document, running document, whatever. That and it doesn't need to sound good. That's where I come into the equation, is I make stuff
Right.
sound good. I put the polish on. But you just put the facts into, whatever tracking document or book or workbook that you're using, and that is what you pull from, and that makes the resume writing way less hard. So that makes job searching way less hard.
Awesome. We're done. We got the
Yeah.
gold seal endorsement from Kamara on the planet. Thank you. But yeah, um, that makes sense because I think we tend to, right. We'll forget 6 months of performance when it comes to those performance
Totally.
conversations. You'd be like, and we assume the manager's going to see that and recognize it, and they're logging it. That's not the case. So you need that,
No,
yeah, and especially in a career change, especially in a
totally.
career change, giving you the ammo, and you're
Absolutely.
like, great, let's make this happen. Love it, love it. So
Yeah,
what's that
absolutely.
process? And this may be it. Well, actually, let me get back to that second question. Just
Sure.
for the folks that are still wondering, 2 pager, 3 pager.
Oh,
What?
sorry. I
Yeah,
totally I totally
no,
didn't
I almost
answer that.
forgot too. But what's your take on that?
Um, so I used to be like a real stickler for number of pages, like
Hmm
really strict. One page for anyone with less than 5 years work experience, 2 pages for everyone else. So 5 years or
Mm,
more, 2 page, everyone else. I was getting CEOs on 2 pages, and I can, but should I? And so I really loosened up, in terms of number of pages, and now I don't see any sort of rule. Your resume needs to be as long as it needs to be in order to tell your story in the right way.
hmm
um, Trying to keep to 2 pages may help you, prioritize the stories that you should be sharing and that are relevant to be sharing on your resume. But I don't want job seekers, particularly the very experienced professionals, stressing out about a 2 page resume. Like, I just was talking to a potential client the other day who had a 1 page resume, but is a very, like, at a senior leadership level, one
mm,
page senior leadership. And I'm like, why?
yeah, yeah,
And they were told by their MBA school that they needed to keep to 1 page. And I'm like, no, like, that's, please don't confine yourself to that. Cause I was seeing like roles with one single bullet. And so I'm like, you're not giving the full story here. Like,
yeah.
how is anyone supposed to see that you're qualified? So it's just, yeah, it needs to be as long as it needs to be to tell your story the right way. Um, I would like to see, folks who have less than 5 years work experience try and stick to a 1 page in order to get in the habit of prioritizing, the right information on their resume.
Mm.
But once you're an experienced, established professional, I would really like folks to stop stressing about the 2 page rule, or 1 page rule. I've seen 3 page resumes, do very well, and, I'm not meeting any recruiters these days who really care about page, like, number of pages. What are your thoughts on that as a
It's funny
recruiter?
because as you're saying that, you got to think from a just function of how the resume is structured, right? If you're 10 years plus, I love the less than 5 years. Yes, 1 page is that. I think that's good. If you're more than that, you already have title, contact information, summary. If you do education at the top, that doesn't leave much room for anything else. So how, just physically, how can you maximize that real estate on the one page if you have 10 plus years. I think just, if you just look at it logically, it doesn't make sense. You're selling yourself tremendously short if you got that much experience and try to jam it in, because
Yeah.
it won't, it just won't make sense. We'll be looking at it like this. We'll be here's the recruiter like this is it. This is all they've done.
Yeah,
So
this is it.
like it'll
Exactly.
say from 2000 to 21 at the same company, and it'll be like this, but this is all they've done. No, they've done more than that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that I don't see how they would do that on one page when they have that much more experience. When it comes to some, if you were to bullet point it, you mentioned bullet pointing on the resume. Obviously, the importance of putting things in order. What is your order in which you attack the resume?
Like how do I what's kind of the
Preps.
lay of the land on the resume?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've stated my approach that I follow. So, name, obviously,
Hmm.
title, and the title for me is the title of the job to which you're applying. So it basically that title serves two purposes. It identifies what you're applying to, and it also helps prime the reader for how they should be reading your resume. So title at the top, and then contact information, um, city, state, phone number, email, and LinkedIn link, hyperlinked.
Hmm.
And then the summary profile paragraph that you're mentioning, a skills section. This is for experienced professionals, a skills section, and then right into work experience. Uh, Sorry?
Oh no, I was going to ask a question because I like what you said. You said title, so they know in which way to read your resume. So you're
Hmm.
saying if I'm marketing, but I want to get into project management, the resume should lead them into that path based on that. Once you see that title, I should be reading project management skill sets versus having
Correct.
project management and you're still reading, marketing skill sets, and you're like wondering. I love that.
Awesome. I'm
Share,
glad.
yeah, share more about that because that's, I think, again, as a job seeker, we're not seeing that or understand that it's you're telling the story and you're saying that title would then set the tone for what they should be reading.
Right. So there's a few different ways that you can attack that title. So like you could just flat out say project manager,
Hmm.
and then in the summary profile paragraph, that's where we could expand on that. So marketing specialist turned project manager, and then get into kind of like a value proposition, like why you uniquely bring value to this changing career. So you could just put project manager at the top, or you could put something like aspiring project manager, or you could just spell it out and say marketing manager transitioning to project manager, or you can use it as a bit of a headline. So some of my peers use that title as more of a headline to call out some really big career wide accomplishments, and so you could use that as a bit of a headline as well. But whatever you put in that title or that header at the top under your name just really should help the reader, just set the scene for the reader in terms of how they should be reading your resume.
Awesome. Is there a difference in the type of content, meaning, viable information, save 20%, increase this when it comes to different level of in your background versus, someone 5 years less? Do you think they would have that in there? Does that still add versus an executive level? Obviously, they want to see quantifiable data type information. Does that vary based on skills, years of experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we can quantify and it makes sense to quantify, I encourage quantifying, but it doesn't always make sense. So let's continue with the
Mhm.
project manager example. Sometimes I'll see on project manager resumes things like um, managed 8 projects in 2022, and it's like, okay, so so you managed 8 projects. Is that is that a few? Is that many? Is that a
Mm,
huge amount for this project manager role? Is that a small amount for this project manager role? What was the value of those projects? I also had a client way back who was at a very senior executive level in business development, and he mentioned something about managing a portfolio of 10 clients. I was like, 10 clients? I was like, what were their assets under management? Because he was in financial services, and he was like, oh yeah, it was about 125 million. And I was like, that's a lot different than counting your number of clients, you know. So we got to be careful with those quantifiable accomplishments. Use them when they make sense. And going back to your question about contrasting number of years experience and what to show, we want to always make sure that what we're showcasing backs up our qualifications for the job to which we're applying.
mhm.
So that is really the test that all resume content needs to pass. So I'm okay with seeing a quantifiable accomplishment on like a very early career professional's resume, and surely I would like to see it on a senior leader's resume. Where things get a little more different would be when you're moving from individual contributor to a leadership position.
Mhm.
We're going to see more of a shift in tactical over to strategic work. We're going to see more of a shift of um, mobilizing forces, starting from having a smaller headcount and leading them or mentoring them to achieve certain things. So there's going to be shifts in the leadership and the strategic work, as well as the moving from tactical to strategic. I hope that
When
makes sense.
it does, which is a great segue to the question I have is
Uh-huh.
can't I've heard someone say or read somewhere where the resume should speak to the future or what you're planning on doing, and we might have covered it already versus what you've already completed. Does
Hmm.
does that make sense? Like again, if whether you're career changing or not, but you're changing companies, right? You're going for a new role.
Hmm.
That it should be crafted it in a way that you're speaking in future tech tense versus um, past tense. Like completed this, completed that, or so. I'm like, how do you do that? I, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
I it does, and I like it. I think certainly we want the resume to be future. We want whatever we share to be future focused.
Hmm.
Um, if we've accomplished something from a grammatical rules standpoint, it has to be in past tense. Like, we did it, so it should be in past tense. So that aside, I do like the idea of being future focused in what we share.
Hmm.
Again, showing that we are qualified and equipped and able to do what are applying to. So if that's what was being meant, then yeah, I'm totally on board for that. I I think I can see that getting a little verbose though. Like, if someone's really worried that, like, I got to spell this out and I got to show the reader how in the future I'm going to be able to do something great,
Hmm.
that might get a little lengthy.
Yeah.
So we want to avoid that. But I do like the idea of always being mindful of writing and sharing stories that show you're equipped and ready to do work moving forward, if that
Got it.
makes sense.
It does. Nadia has another. I assume that yes, another question. LinkedIn work history versus resume. Um,
That is for another episode. I could talk
there you have it.
forever on that.
But yeah,
Um,
share with us. Should that mirror one another, or is there a difference?
Definitely, they can mirror each other, but I don't want to see job seekers copying and pasting resume into LinkedIn. But we see that a lot.
Hmm.
So with LinkedIn, I really want to encourage people to use first person language. And so saying I did whatever, or I'm excited about whatever, feel free to use that. This LinkedIn is far more dynamic and social than what is expected in a resume and what the resume standards are. Resumes can get a little dry, but they're there to present the facts. LinkedIn can be more about what you're excited about doing in your career, where you see yourself headed, where you've been already, where way back in your career that you think equips you for what you're doing today, work you loved doing, why you loved it, and you can use language like
Mhm.
that on LinkedIn. It will make for a much more personable experience for the reader on LinkedIn, and rather than just seeing your resume regurgitated there.
If you were to put a weight on LinkedIn versus the resume, which weighs more now in this time and
Oh
era?
gosh.
What?
I think that's more for a recruiter like yourself to answer. I oh boy, they are equally as important and serve two purposes, like two
Mm,
different purposes. Your resume is kind of like the it's the facts. It backs up your candidacy. It needs to be on your file to prove that you're qualified.
right, right.
Um, Whereas with LinkedIn, that's straight up marketing,
Yep.
and it's kind of like your own piece of internet real estate to just kind of set up shop and promote yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, resumes are marketing too, but LinkedIn is yeah, they're both equally as important, and I think there should be a focus on both. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, yeah, I was you pretty much hit it. I would tell you that the because the LinkedIn profile is something we immediately go to once we receive the resume or start the search on LinkedIn, LinkedIn recruiter to find you. You'll have recruiters that will look at it, and I said this previously, that the level of activity on your page kind of lets us know. We
Mm,
kind of look at that like, will this person respond or this and that? They're not that much engaged. What's going on here? It's not necessarily a knockout, but we just wonder, okay, they're not that engaged on the platform. Where from a resume standpoint, and you'd be surprised. I'm not sure if the resume is well written. The assumption is you will have a well crafted LinkedIn page. But when the resume is maybe not that impactful with content and nuggets, you shift over. You're like, wow, they haven't posted in 6 months or commented on 6 months. You're like, this person's a ghost. Where are they? So we have different thoughts on that. But yeah, I would say um, just the power of LinkedIn is underutilized from a marketing
mm,
standpoint from job seekers. Like it's a global platform. Leverage the heck out of it. Yeah, I appreciate it.
yes.
David Ball says, totally agree. It is an incredible resource too. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Do
love
you
LinkedIn. Yeah.
let's because you do LinkedIn as well. Um,
Mhm.
can you write a career changing LinkedIn profile?
Y- can I
Is
myself
that
or can job seekers?
you? Well,
Oh,
meaning in
yes, I can.
overall, can that be done? Like, does your
Oh,
LinkedIn
yes.
profile need to show that same shift or forward thinking when it comes?
Yeah, it that's a bit trickier. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of job seekers get hung up in worries that their current employer will see
Mm,
stuff. So it does come down to your comfort level, but I do love when we can call out those big career changes in your actual LinkedIn. Um, and Particularly when we're talking about your work experience, because we have more room and we have more room to say more things, but also be more playful on your LinkedIn. That allows us to say more things that are a little more direct and kind of spelled out, like, yeah, I know that I did this, but I'm ready to do make a big career change. And I think
Mhm.
that, what I did in blank job is really going to help me do this, and this in my next target role, the career that I want to change into. So we can spell it out a little more directly rather than worrying ourselves about phrasing accomplishments the right way to support that career change, because that's going to be done on our resume. You can do it on your LinkedIn too, but you have more freedom to say things a little more directly and playfully and in a fun way and a personal way on LinkedIn. So I do think that you absolutely can write a career change LinkedIn, but it comes down to what you're comfortable with. I do love calling out career change in the headline as well, like
Mhm.
marine biologist turned real estate analyst. Ready to move from what I don't know, fish to like whatever.
Fish to bricks.
Fish to bricks. There you go. That's so fantastic. Like, how catchy would that be?
Yeah,
Like, that would be
yeah, that's
just so
cool.
catchy. Like, that would give a recruiter pause, right? Like,
From from fish to bricks.
what? Yeah, yeah,
That's a
totally.
YouTube channel.
Um,
That's
yeah, yeah.
that's
And
hilarious.
so you can say things like that. And I think there's just so much you can do on LinkedIn that can speak to the career change. But again, it's like, how discreet do you need to be based on your own comfort level, as well as what you're worried about. And yeah, so there's many things to consider, but yeah, it can absolutely be done.
From how do you get around, or how do we get around ageism on a resume? So I'm sure you come across
Mm.
that dealing with executives. So,
Oh yeah, a lot. So there are many different strategies. I'll start with like the easiest strategies that anyone can do on their resume, like right now, and that's
mhm,
remove graduation dates from your resume. I even do that with really young job seekers who are like particularly high achievers, like fast track, because ageism can work that way as well. Like, someone might, like a hiring manager might be like, well, who is this young person? Like, why? Like, what do they know about the world? Why should I hire them? So, removing graduation dates from your resume will is a good start. I don't like to automatically cut old work experience if there's something valuable there. So I think a knee jerk reaction from job seekers is just to cut stuff that's older than 15 years, let's say. But I don't like to
mhm,
do
mhm,
that necessarily if there's something that we can use. And also if there's a way for us to kind of lay a foundation for the career, especially if you're making a career change, that can be valuable as well. So I like to use for like, let's say someone has a career that's going back into, I don't know, the early 90s, and they're like really worried, or even the 80s, and they're like really worried about ageism. But there's something, like there's a good like accomplishment or a good couple accomplishments from that time. Then
mhm,
I would like to take those couple accomplishments and put them into a other work experience section
mhm.
early, like earlier in the work experience, like before you start getting into the details of your work experience, and just kind of cherry picking those great accomplishments from early on in your career and just highlighting those in that section, without any dates.
Got
And
it.
then we're not losing that work experience entirely.
Oh, someone mentioned, I would love not to put graduation dates because I didn't finish my degree, so it works out in my favor. Love it. Great tips.
Well, that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
whether to
we
put
can't claim as
incomplete.
an degree that we didn't finish. Yeah,
Exactly,
I just
exactly.
put, yeah, coursework in whatever my major was,
Mhm.
let's say, and then leave it at that. Hmm.
Here's a question. When it comes to the style of resumes nowadays, are we
Hmm.
still doing? Is it chronological, the primary? Are we still using functional? Or are we combining the two based on the years of experience? Because you kind of alluded to it. If it was in the '90s, but you put it into a other section, is that a combination of the functional and a traditional chronological resume?
That's a good question, and a good something that's good that you pointed out. So, I mean, for people in the hiring, no, yes, it would be considered a bit of a hybrid to make those like other work experience or a career highlight section at the top.
Hmm.
But I don't like to confuse people because, like, I don't like to confuse job seekers saying like, oh yeah, it's a hybrid resume that has it's a chronological resume, but it has components of functional resume. I don't like to mention that. More so, I like to just say this is something that you could add here, or this is something you could add here. These like highlight sections. So um at the end of the day, it is a chronological, reverse chronological resume.
Hmm.
um I'm hearing all the time from recruiters and hiring managers how much they hate functional resumes, and that's
Hmm.
because functional resumes are always poorly executed, and that's due to no fault on the job seeker. It's just they see these examples of functional resumes on the internet, so they try to emulate it, but they're not good either. And so avoiding functional resumes and really trying to stick to the chronological structure, reverse chronological structure, is going to win every time. It's way easier to follow, way easier to read, and I don't know what you think as a recruiter, but I presume you prefer a reverse chronological resume.
Yeah, yeah. Functional doesn't give details, and
No,
it's usually the cut and paste method. Like, wait a minute, you got to show progression in your jobs. And the moment we see cut and
right,
paste, it's like, okay, this person, no, no. I don't care what you did. If
right,
you were a receptionist at company A, company B, you went from working 4 lines to 10. We need to see the progression in skill set and growth. So, yeah, that doesn't make
yeah,
sense. Not a
yeah.
fan of that. Not a fan of that. So, uh,
Me neither.
looking at the top of the hour, we're coming on. I got a ton of questions I could probably still ask you, but let's save that for part two. We'll go we'll
Okay,
go we'll go that much deeper into part two. So,
sounds good.
what are some quick tips, some quick actionable tips that you can give that job seeker who's looking to change their career when it comes to their resume,
Sure.
improving their resume? Because you mentioned earlier you help some folks that are trying to DIY it or or not. What would you
Through my
say?
YouTube channel. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Hmm.
um, yeah. So maybe I'll share the 5 R's that I like to follow. And even though I came up with these 5 R's, I had to write them down because I always forget the fifth, like one of the five.
Okay.
Okay. But
I'm
these
writing it down.
these
I'm
are the
writing it down.
five. Okay. I wrote it down too. So the 5 R's, this is a kind of a framework that I like to recommend to help job seekers take, say, old work experience to rework it towards new, like big career changes.
Mm,
So we want to take accomplishments that we have accomplished in our work, and we want to reframe them so that it really makes sense towards our new target career path.
mhm,
We want to make sure that it's relevant. Like, if we're going from marketing to project manager, we don't necessarily want to share anything about how we are really good at graphic design or something and built a logo. Like, is that really going to help us move into a project manager job? So we want to
right,
make sure it's relevant. We want to make sure it relates to the role. So really, just making sure that it is aligned with the job to which we're applying. We want it to reinforce strengths and skills that we will bring to this new line of work.
mm,
And we want to make sure that it resonates with the target employer. So that's why it's so important to make sure we've already identified that target job before we start the resume writing process, or resume rewriting process, I should say, because that is really what sets the stage for us in terms of knowing what is worth sharing and what is worth just keeping in another file somewhere else.
love it. That's either an ebook, or
Oh,
a carousel post. Yeah,
oh, thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. This is
Write
this
that
is
down.
becoming a mastermind for me.
It's just certain guests say certain things. I'm like, wow, that's. I mean, you think about it for how you phrase it and propose it when you're taking older accomplishments and transforming to new. That's probably one of the major things. How do I reframe this? I think we get stuck right there. Like, how do I reframe this and make it, and you have it in perfect order. How do I make it relevant? How do it relate? How do I reinforce the skills that it doesn't seem, outdated or whatever, that I'm still at the top of my game, he or she? And then how does it resonate? How does it connect for a recruiter to be like, yep, let's give this person a call? I think that's absolutely
Yeah.
perfect. I think that's a
Thank you.
5 page ebook.
5 page
Out,
ebook. Oh, wow. Okay.
outline it,
Thanks.
and you can sell it or free.
Thank
Whichever one.
you.
Whichever one. Whichever one. Absolutely. So, Kamar, I last two questions. Where can folks find you, and gain and consume your content?
So I am Chimera Toffolo everywhere. So you'll find me on YouTube, Twitter, all under Chimera Toffolo. And I'm not super active on Instagram, but I show up there from time to time. I'm also getting into the TikTok.
Mm,
Despite being an old millennial, I am getting into it, learning how it works. Um, the learning curve is huge for me for some reason with
yeah,
this TikTok
I'm
thing,
not even.
but I'm learning.
Yeah,
Are you on TikTok?
I'm all I. What you'll see on when I tag you, when I tagged you on the few things on IG, I just reposted over there. I can't do the other stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I haven't danced yet, but I've
yeah, yeah.
done some lip
I can't. It
syncing.
doesn't work for me.
But yeah, so I'm Kamara Toffolo everywhere. I'm most active on YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn. Oh my gosh, we're on LinkedIn and I
Yeah, I
didn't
was gonna
plug
say, wait a minute
LinkedIn.
now.
We're on LinkedIn and I didn't plug LinkedIn. So I'm most active on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Have you thought about uh, a book or podcast?
So I used to have on my YouTube channel, I used to run Office Hours Live, which
Hmm.
I'm
Oh,
hoping to get back into this year. Um, Having a toddler kind of took priority
oh
for
yeah,
me. I'm hoping to get back into it because I've had some great guests. Maybe like to join me when I reboot it.
absolutely,
Yeah, thank you.
absolutely.
And so yeah, I hope to reboot it soon. So there's that. Um, I I have no desire to write a book, believe it or not. I this is what I say. I don't want to. I don't have no desire to write a book, but if someone wants to give me a TV show, I'll take.
That's that's an
So
undertaking.
so if someone needs like the Oprah of job search for their
Ah,
network, I'm available.
you put it out there. What would you call it? You put it out there. I'm sure you thought about the
Hmm.
title.
I haven't thought of a title actually. I'm more so like I'm worried about like what do I wear
Yeah.
on TV.
Awesome,
So
awesome. You need a stylist.
anyway,
So
yeah.
any stylists out there, contact Kamara
Thanks
for future
for my
future
future
talk
TV show.
future TV show.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what's your daily mantra? I like to ask each guest, what keeps you going each day? What gets you up?
Mm. What gets me up is having a toddler, but
Right.
what keeps me going? That's a good one. I mean, I think I was hearing it a lot on TikTok or Instagram recently. I think is it from Finding Nemo, but the just keep swimming, just keep
That's
swimming,
Nemo. Yeah.
just keep swimming. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of on repeat in my head right now. Is just keep swimming. So
Mm,
I think that really applies to job searching. Is um, it's the long game, and I think and I know that job seekers feel such urgency to land the next big thing. And but job searching does take perseverance. So just keep swimming. You'll
love
get
it.
there.
Sure you don't want a book? Because that's a great title. Oh wow, that's a
Oh,
great
I
title.
can't take it. Disney will come after me.
Really. Just say, just keep swimming with Kamara. There you go. Change, slight low change.
Thanks.
Well, Kamara, I appreciate you so much, for one, saying yes, for two, just your wealth of information and content that you're providing both on LinkedIn and YouTube. So I highly urge folks to follow you. You are a wealth of information. Absolutely
Thank
love your
you.
content. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me. Joining absolutely.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Any last parting words? Anything you want to just throw out to say in the atmosphere for folks?
Um, I think 2023 is the year of career change for many of us.
Mm,
So
mm.
make it happen, Captain.
That sounds like a cliffhanger right there. I love that. Okay. for, for part two, because you said us. Okay, we'll talk.
Oh yeah, no,
no,
we'll see.
no. Well, thank you, Kamar, again. Hold on real quick. I'm going to close this out with a quick video. Just want to chat with you briefly afterwards. But, folks, tune in for continued actionable advice here on the Career Talks podcast. Thank you.